Well, the situation in Sweden seems to be getting worse by the day, and Joe Alton at thedailycaller.com brings us up to speed and exactly how bad it actually is. As you know, the government of Sweden has opened the borders of their country to Islamic insurgents. Of course, we're not supposed to acknowledge that they're Muslims. We're supposed to call them immigrants or migrants and pretend that they are fleeing something in the Middle East or maybe sub-Saharan Africa, wherever they happen to come from. And that these are just normal, everyday people like Europeans. But they're not. There's no such thing as cultural relativity. There is such a thing as IQ disparity. These are violent people, innately violent. Does that mean that every single one of them is violent? Well, that's not what we're saying. But we're saying what we're seeing in Sweden is undeniable. Unless you're a liberal, then you deny it. Okay, here's what we read at dailycaller.com. Let me go over to the screen grab so you can follow along. He says, here is how the Swedes are apparently, quote, managing these problems. Yes, there's a tone of sarcasm there. Because the politicians in Sweden, the liberals, left-wing lunatics, globalists who have opened the borders to this Islamic insurgency are in a state of denial. Because what else are they going to do? They have to acknowledge that they basically screwed up the country, and that's the polite term. Police enter into a riot zone, often near one of the no-go areas with large migrant populations. So even Daily Caller is a little bit hesitant to refer to these people as what they are, Islamic insurgents, Muslims. They call them politely migrants. Roving group of rioters attack them with rocks and other projectiles, and the police, along with paramedics and firefighters, are forced to retreat. I would say that actually they're not forced to because the government of Sweden has the ability to put down these rioters. What they don't have is they don't have the willpower. They don't have the desire. They're basically left-wing lunatics who want to pretend that there's just some social injustice going on here, so let's don't be too hard on these poor little migrants. Beatings, robberies, fires, and other acts of violence ensue, he says, in the Rinkeby unrest. People were assaulted and a press photographer hospitalized. In the city of Malmo, migrant rioters have taken to lobbing hand grenades in the street. And he emphasizes by repeating, hand grenades. One killed an 8-year-old boy. Now, I wonder if we're going to see the images of that 8-year-old boy in the liberal media. You know, when little children lose their lives, as they're making the transition, if you want to call it that, from Muslim countries across the Mediterranean, fleeing to Western Europe, trying to flee themselves, which they can't do. Okay, those little children, they will put images in front of us incessantly, tugging on our emotions. But this little 8-year-old boy, you're not going to see a picture of him. You're not going to hear about this guy. Because this little child was killed by Muslims. We can't even call them Muslims. We have to call them migrants. Problems are being managed so well in Sweden that 80% of law enforcement officers are looking for new careers, he writes. Something safer perhaps like mercenary duty in Somalia or diplomatic work in Boko Haram. I think he's being sarcastic. And you've got to admit, yeah, that's kind of funny. Despite dismay among the increasingly beleaguered police, most Swedes still are pro-immigration. Why? Because the media has effectively brainwashed them, in my opinion. He goes on and he writes, they believe that refusing entry to refugees is mean-spirited. Pro-immigration protest with refugees welcome signs are commonplace events despite the recent violence. Perhaps it's Islamophobic, he writes, to suggest that the violence in Sweden is caused by Arab and Somali migrants. Then again, maybe not. Local police investigator Peter Springara, I think I talked about this in another video, stated on social media that almost all the serious crimes are committed by these groups. What groups? Arab and Somali migrants. To the Swedish, Mr. Springara is an outlier. Close to retirement age, he feels that he no longer has to toe the line of political correctness. Well, what would happen if everybody said, we're not going to toe the line of political correctness? By the way, if you stumbled across this YouTube channel, that's what you have stumbled across. We're not going to toe the line of political correctness. We're going to toe the line of accuracy and honesty. Okay, people call you names when you do that, so you can't be bluntly honest. After they call me names, which are, well, they call me a racist, they'll call me an Islamophobe, they'll call me a xenophobe. But when they're done calling me names, we're going to continue being honest. And the fact of the matter is, these Islamic insurgents are destroying Nordic countries. They're destroying Western civilization. But you can't say that. You can't be bluntly honest. Well, actually, you can, but you risk being ostracized, as was found out by Peter Springera when he dared to speak the truth. Well, we're going to speak the truth. If that means we're going to be ostracized, you know what? There's plenty of room out here. It's kind of nice outside the mainstream, and if you want to join us, we encourage you to do that. But what you're going to have to realize if you're going to come out here in the mainstream, the wilderness of the wonderful world of honesty, you're going to have to acknowledge the fact that people who live in the Middle East, on an average, have an IQ of about 85. But you're not supposed to acknowledge that. People who live in sub-Saharan Africa, on an average, have an IQ of about 70 or lower. That's the type of honesty we face out here in the wilderness, far removed from the multicultural myths of the mainstream. If you care to join us, we encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Also, leave a comment in the comment section below, and whatever you do, share this video, because what's going on in Sweden is what's going on all across the Western world. We're being taken over, and one of the things we realize is the unrest and the instability. The third world economies of the Middle East and sub-Saharan Africa is being transferred to Europe. These people aren't escaping anything. They're taking it with them. They're not fleeing it. They're bringing it, and there's a huge difference. Once again, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
How to subscribe? Click subscribe. Click the bell. Check the box. Save.